welcome to this edition of The List on UWW-TV. I'm Chris Pittner alongside David Pollier. For the next few minutes, we'll present our top 5 sports stories of the week and discuss why they made the top 5. Did your top 5 make our list? Let's find out. At number 5, the MLB season is right around the corner, and teams are just starting to finalize their 26-player rosters. While we're still in the heat of spring training, many teams will look to have definitive rosters by opening day on March 30th. David, how are you feeling about some of these teams going into opening day, particularly your Chicago White Sox?
Well, for one, I think that the White Sox hopefully will kind of start to get back on track after a disappointing season last year with World Series expectations. Not making the postseason is obviously not where you want to be. But in terms of other teams, I think the Phillies are going to be a force to be reckoned with, adding guys like Trey Turner, Craig Kimbrell, and retaining key guys that brought them to the World Series next year. So I definitely look out for the Phillies to make some noise. I know last year they barely snuck into the postseason before making that run, but I think they build off of that postseason success and have a big time in the National League this year.
I think the Brewers, our hometown team and my favorite team, also have a decent shot this year. I really think the division is truly up in the air in the NL Central. I think the Cubs, Cardinals, and Brewers all have a decent shot to win it. I think the pitching's going to still be there with Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta. And they also added all-star catcher William Contreras this year. So look for some bigger things from the offense. I think they made an underrated trade in Jesse Winker. A bit of a gamble, but it's going to work out hopefully.
At number 4, we're running down on some of the big updates from the NFL free agency period. Some big moves that happened already since our last episode include Jimmy Garoppolo going to the Raiders, Juju Smith-Schuster to the New England Patriots, Jamal Williams to the New Orleans Saints, and Jalen Ramsey to the Miami Dolphins. Chris, with more pickups still being worked through, how do you feel about the rest of free agency period and how will it stack up?
I really don't think free agency is going to be the biggest thing. I think so far Jalen Ramsey has been the biggest move, but I think really the big story right now is Aaron Rodgers and the uncertainty behind the additions that he could bring to the Packers in his deal or anything of that nature.
And just today we saw that the Browns have traded for Elijah Moore from the New York Jets, who was a big target for the Packers in the Aaron Rodgers trade. So we'll see how that move kind of affects the Packers moving forward. But I think another underrated move was the addition of Darren Waller to the New York Giants. Got him away from the Raiders for the pick that they got in the Kadarius Toney trade, the number 100 overall pick in this year's draft. I think that was a very underrated move. I know Darren Waller is a little bit older and just came off of an injured season, but if he can get healthy, that's a huge pass-catching weapon for Daniel Jones in this Brian Daboll offense.
Yeah, I really think this is going to be one of those moves that kind of shows what Daniel Jones is worth. I think some people are higher on him than others, and I really think that it's going to be interesting to see him with a true number 1 pass catcher this year. So moving on to our third story, at number 3, March Madness has officially kicked off, and within the first weekend, every single bracket has been busted. Many of the popular teams were taken out before the Sweet 16, including number 1 seeds Purdue and Kansas, number 2 seeds Marquette and Arizona. David, with so many top teams being knocked out early, what does this mean for the rest of the tournament?
Well, I think it really just kind of paves the way for the other 1 seeds to kind of wreak havoc. I personally have had Houston winning in my bracket, so I'm still looking okay. But I just would trust Houston the most because of the fact that I think they have, out of all of the elite teams, the most experienced coach. Kelvin Sampson has been here before, going to both the Elite Eight and the Final Four in recent years. And guys like Marcus Sasser have intense tournament experience that I think will prove very valuable down the stretch. But I also think you can't forget about Alabama. Obviously, with the allegations surrounding Brandon Miller, aren't a great look for the team. But in the first 2 games, Brandon Miller has only scored 10 points in the first 2 games combined. They've won by a combined total of around 35 points. So it proves that even when your best player isn't scoring very much, you still have a very deep roster. And I think Alabama is poised to make a run to the national championship.
I also think another team to look out for is Michigan State. They're coming off a great upset of Marquette in their round of 32 matchup. You can never count out Tom Izzo in March, and Joey Hauser is a really spectacular player for them as well.
I also think that teams that you can't really forget about are Xavier and UConn, teams that have been having a couple of down years for the last few years. UConn has won their first NCAA tournament game this year since 2014, but have a pretty deep roster. And both of these programs we've seen have had intense tournament success in the past, but have taken a couple years off multiple of which they haven't made the tournament for the past few years, excluding UConn last year. But I think those are two mid-seeded teams that have some chances to make some noise here.
Yeah, if there's one thing I know, it's to never count out UConn in March. And anyways, we have more coming up on the list, including the UW Whitewater basketball team in the NCAA tournament. We will be right back.
For Hawk Talk, especially on days I'm hosting, you really need to be up early looking at those news stories, even the night before. I'm finding topics that I can incorporate in the show, and I feel like we get a conversation going.
Once you get the opportunity to do that with other people who appreciate it the same level as you do, it makes it that much more enjoyable.
For everything sports, tune in Monday through Thursday at 91.7 The Edge or watch us on UWW-TV.
Here at UW Whitewater Intramural Sports, we have a motto: a sport for everyone and everyone in a sport.
Come on! That's it anyways. Oh, she got that off. They're going to count it.
Had a blast. Always have fun at intramurals.
Every day we strive to go above and beyond that goal by providing healthy exercise, promoting leisure education, and giving students that competitive atmosphere they are looking for.
Yes! Yes!
It's exciting. Brings me back to those high school days with Friday Night Lights.
With our 25 different intramural sports offered, we guarantee that we have a sport for you. Go to our website and find your sport today.
Number 32, Kyle Hornsby.
Inside the 30. Touchdown. Michaela Burgess. An incredible finish by Hall.
The NCAA and its member schools offer nearly 500,000 college athletes a path to go pro in something other than sports. Learn more at ncaa.org.
As an Army ROTC cadet at Whitewater, you have the opportunity to develop into a great leader while learning and applying the Army values to your everyday life. Within ROTC, you have the chance to travel overseas in the CULP program to train with other militaries, attend many elite Army schools such as Airborne and Combat Diver, and you have the opportunity to attend conferences and guest lectures by some of the Army's top-ranking officers. Our Warhawk cadets participate in many extracurricular activities, Division III sports, Greek life, intramural sports, among many other team building and community service events. Being a cadet at Whitewater is more than just being part of the Army. It's also about being active members in our community and coming together to form a family atmosphere. Anyone who wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves while developing themselves professionally should consider UW Whitewater ROTC. To sign up for UW Whitewater ROTC, go to the 4th floor of McCutcheon Hall to room 417.
Welcome back to the list on UWW-TV. Let's continue the countdown to this week's top sports stories. At number 2, the UW Whitewater men's basketball team reached the end of its season recently. After a hard-fought battle against many teams, the Warhawks reached the end of their tournament run against Mount Union in the Final Four. The Warhawks lost to Mount Union 83-79, fighting all the way to the end with the game coming down to its last buzzer beater seconds. Chris, what does this finish mean for the men on the team, and how does this year affect next year for the Warhawks?
I mean, I really think this really gives all the guys on the team currently the confidence to just shine next year. Pretty much everyone except senior Earl Lewis is going to be back next season, so you can only expect a lot more success, and I would guess that they're probably going to be ranked in the preseason top 10, and that'll give them even more confidence to prove that they can go on a run like this again.
I would have to assume that everyone that is currently a core player on the team will do nothing but take steps forward. Guys like Trayvon Chisholm coming back for his senior year, who you would think has to be one of the best scorers in the entire conference, and then talented young players like Miles Barnstable and Jameer Barker and Carter Capstrand are only going to get better as well. I honestly think that it is win the WEAC tournament or bust for the Warhawks next year after this successful of an NCAA March Madness run.
I mean, I have to agree with you. I know the theme with the team is different guys on different nights, and we saw Carter Capstrand step up huge in the Elite Eight matchup versus Oswego State with 21 points and 15 rebounds to get them all the way to the Final Four game when Trayvon Chisholm was in foul trouble.
And now it's time to reveal our number one sports story of the week. At our number one spot this week, both the UW-Whitewater baseball and softball teams started their season recently, with both teams starting off extremely hot. Both of these teams started their season off 4-0 in Florida, with the men having a complete blowout game against Carroll University, winning the game by a score of 23-4, and the women's team beating St. Catherine 8-1. With both teams being in Florida until March 25th at the latest, Chris, how do you think our teams will stack up this season?
I know the men's team is currently ranked 6th in the country, and they had a tough matchup with the number 1 team in the country this weekend, and they unfortunately did not pull out the win in that one. But I really think the team's going to contend for the WEAC tournament, and I know that scheduling easier games at the beginning of the season and winning 23-4 is going to just give them the confidence they need later in the season, perhaps if they hit a roadblock or two.
Yeah, we'll see how the season progresses. Obviously, the easier games, like you said, are a little bit earlier into the schedule. So as the competition starts to get tougher and the quality of teams starts to go up, we'll see if this streak can kind of remain alive.
And for the softball team, Kiara Kostrowski is off to a 333 batting average start, which is very, very solid for them. They're going to look to also contend for the WEAC title this season. And David, I know you have a few more impact players for the women's team as well.
Becker for the softball team is batting, I believe, .412 right now, which is very impressive. No home runs yet, but hopefully those will start to come. But it's just nice to see that this start from the women's team, hopefully that can continue. Like I said, I think once the quality of opponents and the strength of schedule starts to come up, I think the team will face a couple more tests down the road, but right now it's just all encouraging signs.
And that will do it for this edition of The List. We'll be back next week to talk up the sports headlines. For David Paulier, I'm Chris Pittner, and we will see you next week.